They say the suburbs are safe. They never met my wife's sister. I'm Seth Morrison, 35 years old, project manager at a mid-sized tech company, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had a pretty decent life. House in Millbrook Heights, decent salary, wife who worked in HR at a Fortune 500 company. Average maybe, but comfortable. Then Pamela moved in. It's just temporary, my wife Sabrina had said, not really asking for my opinion. She's going through a rough divorce, and she needs somewhere to stay with the kids. The kids turned out to be 3 sugar-fueled tornadoes aged 6, 8, and 10. Pamela turned out to be a 40-year-old woman who treated our house like her personal resort, and me like the help. I walked into my kitchen that Tuesday morning to find Pamela lounging at our breakfast bar in a silk robe, painting her nails, while her youngest, Tyler, systematically emptied our cereal boxes onto the floor. "Morning, Seth," she said without looking up. "Could you be a doll and make Tyler some eggs? He doesn't like cereal." I stared at the Cheerios scattered across my kitchen floor like confetti after a very sad party. "Where's Sabrina?" "Already left for work. She said you'd handle breakfast." Pamela blew on her nails. "Oh, and we're out of coffee. Could you grab some on your way home? The good stuff, not that generic brand you usually buy." I looked around my own kitchen, in my own house, being told what to do by a woman who'd contributed exactly $0 to the mortgage. "Pamela, I need to get to work too." "Of course, honey. But Tyler needs to eat first. You understand?" No, I didn't understand. But I made the eggs anyway, because that's what average guys do. We make the eggs and buy the good coffee and pretend we don't mind when our space gets invaded by people who think the world owes them something. That evening, I tried talking to Sabrina about it. "She's family, Seth," Sabrina said, not looking up from her phone. She'd been doing that a lot lately, staring at her phone with this little smile that never appeared when she was looking at me. And it's not forever. She's been here 3 weeks. She's redecorated our guest room. She's using our Netflix account to buy movies. And yesterday, I caught her going through our mail. "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Because she asked me about our mortgage payment and whether we have a home equity line of credit." Sabrina finally looked up from her phone. "She's just curious about how we manage our finances. She's going through a divorce, remember? She needs to understand these things. Then she can talk to a financial advisor, not rifle through our personal documents." Sabrina sighed in that way that made me feel like I was being unreasonable for not wanting strangers to inventory my private information. "Can we not do this tonight? I had a really long day." I noticed she didn't put the phone down. 2 weeks later, things got worse. I came home from work to find Pamela hosting what looked like a wine club meeting in our living room. 5 women I'd never seen before were scattered across our furniture, drinking what I recognized as the expensive Pinot Grigio Sabrina, and I had been saving for our anniversary. "Seth!" Pamela called out cheerfully. "Come meet the girls. Ladies, this is Sabrina's husband." Not my brother-in-law, not Seth. Sabrina's husband, like I was an accessory. "Hi," I said, wondering why I felt like I needed permission to walk through my own living room. "We were just talking about how lucky Sabrina is," said a blonde woman with too much lipstick. "Such a beautiful house, and so generous of you both to take Pamela in during her difficult time." "Very generous," agreed another woman. "Not everyone would be so accommodating." I felt like I was in some weird alternate reality, where I was being praised for something I'd never actually agreed to do. "Well, family is important." "Exactly," Pamela beamed. "Seth totally gets it. He's been so supportive. Haven't you, Seth?" There was something in her tone that felt like a trap. Like if I said anything other than yes, I'd be the bad guy who kicked out a poor divorced mother and her children. "Sure," I said. "See? I told you he was a sweetheart. Now, Seth, honey, we're running a little low on wine. Could you maybe run to the store?" I looked around at 5 women drinking my anniversary wine in my living room, being asked to go buy more alcohol for a party I hadn't been invited to in my own house. Actually, I think I'll just grab a beer and head upstairs. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. "Of course," Pamela said, her smile getting tighter. "You must be tired. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and headed upstairs, hearing the conversation resume behind me in hushed, disapproving tones. I caught fragments. Men can be so, and poor Sabrina, and not very social, is he? When Sabrina got home at 10:30, I was already in bed, reading. How was the wine thing? She asked, not quite meeting my eyes. Expensive. They finished the Pinot Grigio. Oh, she paused. That's okay. We can get another bottle. That was our anniversary wine, Sabrina. I know, but... She trailed off, then tried a different approach. Pamela's going through a really hard time. Her friends are being very supportive. In our house, with our wine, while I get sent to my room like a kid who's bothering the adults. Sabrina sat down on the edge of the bed. She didn't send you anywhere. You chose to come upstairs. After she asked me to leave and go buy more wine for her party, she asked you to go to the store. That's not the same thing. I put down my book and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. When had she started taking her sister's side in every conversation? When had I become the unreasonable one for wanting some say in what happened in my own house? How long is this going to last? I asked. I don't know. Her lawyer says the divorce could take months. Months. Seth, she's my sister. She has nowhere else to go. She has friends. She just had 5 of them over to drink our wine. That's not the same as having a place to live. I wanted to point out that she seemed to have plenty of money for wine club meetings and manicures and designer coffee, but I could see from Sabrina's expression that this conversation was over. I was the selfish husband who didn't understand family loyalty. Fine, I said, but I want some ground rules. Such as? Such as asking before she has people over, such as contributing to groceries if she's feeding her kids here, such as not going through our personal documents. Sabrina was quiet for a long moment. I'll talk to her. But she didn't. Or if she did, it didn't change anything. The next few weeks were like living in a house that was slowly being taken over by someone else's life. Pamela's kids' artwork appeared on our refrigerator. Her yoga mat claimed permanent residence in our living room. Her coffee mug, a giant thing that said "World's Best Mom," sat in our dish drainer like it belonged there. But the worst part was watching my friends' reactions when they came over. Dennis had been my best friend since college. He was a straight-talking guy who worked construction and had no patience for bullshit. When he came over for our usual Thursday night poker game, Pamela intercepted him at the door. "You must be Dennis," she said, like she was the hostess. "I'm Pamela, Sabrina's sister. I've heard so much about you." Dennis looked confused. Hi. Is Seth around?" "Of course. Come in, come in. Can I get you something to drink? We have beer, wine, some lovely sparkling water." I watched from the kitchen as Pamela gave Dennis the grand tour of what used to be my living room, now decorated with her throw pillows and scented candles. "This is nice," Dennis said politely when he finally made it to the kitchen. "Very homey." "Pamela's been redecorating," I said. "I see that." Dennis lowered his voice. "How long is she staying?" Good question. We set up for poker in the dining room, but within an hour, Pamela had drifted in with a glass of wine, asking about the game, commenting on our cards, generally making it impossible to have a normal guy's night. "This looks fun," she said. "Mind if I watch?" What were we supposed to say? Get out of your own house? So she watched and commented and asked questions, until Dennis was checking his watch and making excuses about having to get up early. After he left, I found Pamela in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. "Your friend seems nice," she said. "A little quiet, maybe." "He's usually not." Well, some people take time to warm up. I'm sure he'll be more comfortable next time." There wasn't going to be a next time, at least not here. Dennis started suggesting we play poker at his place, or at a bar, anywhere but my house. He never said why, but I knew. The same thing happened with my other friends. Mike, who used to come over to watch football, started inviting me to sports bars instead. Tom stopped dropping by on weekends. Even James, who'd been friends with both me and Sabrina since college, started acting weird. "How's married life?" he asked when we met for lunch downtown. "Fine, why?" "Just asking. Sabrina seems busy lately." "Busy how?" James shrugged. "I don't know. Distracted, maybe. when I see her around town. You see her around town? Sometimes, at that coffee place on 5th Street. She's usually with some guy. My stomach did a little flip. What guy? I don't know. Tall, dark hair. Looks like he works out. James paused. I'm sure it's nothing. Probably just work stuff. But something in his tone suggested he didn't think it was work stuff. That night I asked Sabrina about it. James said he saw you at the coffee place on 5th Street. So? She didn't look up from her phone. So I was just wondering who you were with. When? I don't know, recently. Sabrina sighed. Seth, I have lunch meetings all the time. I can't remember every single person I've had coffee with. James said it was the same guy multiple times. Now she looked up. Are you having me followed? What? Number James just mentioned? James needs to mind his own business, and so do you. She got up and left the room, taking her phone with her. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of our bedroom door closing. I sat in the kitchen, wondering when my wife had started treating simple questions like accusations, and when I'd started feeling like a stranger in my own life. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was working late, trying to finish a project proposal that was due the next morning, when I got a text from my neighbor Karen. Everything okay at your house? Lots of cars in your driveway. I looked at the time, 9:30 p.m. I hadn't heard anything from Sabrina about having people over. I drove home to find 6 cars parked in our driveway and along the street. Through our front windows, I could see people moving around, hear music and laughter. I walked into my own house to find what looked like a full-blown party in progress. 20-some people I mostly didn't recognize were scattered through our living room and kitchen, drinking and talking and eating what looked like catered food. Pamela appeared at my elbow immediately. Seth, you're home. Come meet everyone. We're celebrating. Celebrating what? My divorce was finalized today. I'm officially a free woman. She threw her arms around me in a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and wine. Over her shoulder, I could see strangers using our furniture, our dishes, our bathroom. Someone had moved our coffee table to make room for what looked like a makeshift dance floor. Congratulations, I said. But maybe a heads up next time? Oh, it was totally last minute. Sabrina said it would be fine. Where is Sabrina? Around somewhere. Come on, let me introduce you to people. For the next hour, I smiled and made small talk with Pamela's friends, co-workers, and what seemed to be half the divorced women in our zip code. Everyone was very friendly, very complimentary about our house, very impressed with how supportive I was being. But I couldn't find Sabrina anywhere. I finally spotted her on our back patio, talking to a tall guy with dark hair who looked like he worked out. They were standing close together, and Sabrina was laughing at something he'd said. She had her hand on his arm. I walked outside. Hey, I said. Sabrina turned around, and for just a second, she looked guilty. Seth, you're home. This is Marcus. Marcus, this is my husband, Seth. Marcus extended his hand. Nice to meet you, man. Great party. Your wife's been telling me about your remodeling project. What remodeling project? The kitchen renovation? Sabrina said you guys are thinking about opening up the space, maybe putting in an island? I looked at Sabrina. We'd never discussed any kitchen renovation. We're still in the planning stages, Sabrina said quickly. Right. Marcus smiled. Well, if you need any advice, I'm in construction. Always happy to help out friends. Friends. I watched Marcus's hand rest on the small of my wife's back as he talked, watched Sabrina lean into him just slightly, watched them share a look that lasted a beat too long. I think I'll grab a beer, I said. Great idea, Marcus said. I'll come with you. Sabrina, we'll continue our conversation later. As we walked toward the house, Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. You've got a great wife, Seth. Really great. Yeah, I said. I'm a lucky guy. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I was watching my life get rearranged by people who thought they knew better than I did what I wanted. The party finally ended around midnight. As I helped clean up, I found Sabrina's phone on the kitchen counter. It buzzed with a text message, and the preview showed on the lock screen. Thanks for tonight. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Minus am I. I stared at that message for a long time, feeling something cold settle in my chest. When Sabrina came looking for her phone, I handed it to her without saying anything. "Thanks," she said, glancing at the screen. If she saw the message, she didn't react. "Nice party," I said. Pamela was so happy. It meant a lot to her. "I'm sure it did." Marcus seemed nice. "Yeah, he's a good guy, very helpful." "Helpful how?" Sabrina looked at me with that expression I'd been seeing more and more lately, like I was asking questions I had no right to ask. "Just helpful, Seth. He knows a lot about construction and renovation, since we've been talking about updating the kitchen." "Have we been talking about that?" "We've mentioned it." "When?" "I don't remember exactly when. Does it matter?" It did matter. It mattered that my wife was making plans I didn't know about with men I'd never met. It mattered that I was finding out about my own life from strangers at parties in my own house. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "I'm going to bed." "Okay, I'll be up in a few minutes." But she wasn't. I lay awake until 2 a.m. listening for her footsteps on the stairs before I finally fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, Sabrina was already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting. See you tonight." Pamela was at the breakfast bar with her coffee and her phone, looking entirely too cheerful for someone who'd hosted a party until midnight. "Morning, Seth. Thanks for being so cool about last night. It really meant a lot." "Sure," I said. "I know it was short notice, but sometimes you just have to celebrate life, you know." I poured myself coffee and tried to think of a response that wouldn't make me sound like a complete asshole. "So," Pamela continued, "now that the divorce is final, I can start looking for my own place. Probably take me a few weeks to find something good, but I should be out of your hair soon." "That's great," I said, and meant it. "Yeah, it'll be nice to have my own space again. Not that I haven't loved staying here. You and Sabrina have been so generous." She paused, studying my face. "You okay, Seth? You seem a little, I don't know, stressed?" "Just tired." "Right. Well, maybe you and Sabrina should take a vacation or something, once I move out. She's been working so hard lately, all those late meetings and weekend conferences. She could probably use a break." Late meetings, weekend conferences. I tried to remember the last time Sabrina had mentioned a weekend conference. "Yeah," I said, "maybe we should." But even as I said it, I had the sinking feeling that when Pamela moved out, I wouldn't be getting my life back. I'd just be getting a clearer view of how much of it was already gone. The truth hit me like a freight train 3 days later in the most mundane way possible. I was doing laundry, something that had become my job since Pamela and her kids moved in and tripled our weekly wash load, when I found a receipt in Sabrina's jeans pocket. Hotel receipt, the Marriott downtown. 2 nights last weekend when she'd told me she was at a work conference in Chicago. I stared at that piece of paper for a long time, my hands shaking slightly. The Marriott was 15 minutes from our house. I sat down on our bed with Sabrina's laptop, telling myself I was just going to check our credit card statements, just to make sure there wasn't some mistake. There wasn't a mistake. There were charges I didn't recognize going back months. Restaurants I'd never been to. A jewelry store, more hotel stays. All on weekends when Sabrina had been traveling for work. I was still sitting there, staring at the screen, when I heard voices downstairs. Sabrina was home, and she was talking to someone. "Can't keep doing this," she was saying. Seth's starting to ask questions. "So tell him the truth." A man's voice. "Marcus. It's not that simple. There's the house, our finances. I need to be smart about this." "How much longer are you going to wait?" "I don't know. A few more months, maybe, until I figure out the best way to handle everything." I crept to the top of the stairs, staying in the shadows. "I'm tired of sneaking around," Marcus said. "I want to be with you, really be with you." "I know. I want that too. But Seth, he's not going to make this easy." "What's he going to do? He's the most passive guy I've ever met. You said yourself he never stands up for anything." Sabrina laughed, but it wasn't a nice sound. "You're right. He'll probably just accept it and move on. That's what Seth does. He accepts things." I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. This was how my wife talked about me. This was what she thought of me. "So what's the plan?" Marcus asked. "I'm going to wait until after the holidays. Then I'll tell him I want a separation. By then, I'll have figured out the financial stuff. What financial stuff? The house is in both our names, but I've been putting money aside, and Pamela's been helping me understand what I'm entitled to in a divorce. Of course she had. I thought about Pamela asking about our mortgage, going through our mail, all those helpful questions about our finances. You've got it all figured out, Marcus said. I have to. I'm not going to end up like Pamela, fighting over scraps. I'm going to be smart about this. I heard movement, then the sound of kissing. In my living room, in my house. I went back to our bedroom and closed the door quietly. Then I sat on the bed and tried to figure out how I'd become the kind of man whose wife planned his abandonment like a business transaction. When Sabrina came upstairs 20 minutes later, I was pretending to read. Hey, she said. How was your day? Fine. Yours? Good. Long meeting but productive. She started getting ready for bed, moving around the room like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just been downstairs planning my humiliation with her boyfriend. Who was here earlier? I asked. What do you mean? I heard voices. Oh, that was just Pamela. She had a friend over. Another lie. So casual, so automatic. Right, I said. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Sabrina sleep peacefully beside me. I thought about confronting her, demanding the truth, fighting for my marriage, but I could hear Marcus's voice in my head. He's the most passive guy I've ever met. He never stands up for anything. And Sabrina's response, that's what Seth does. He accepts things. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was the kind of man who just accepted whatever life handed him, who never fought back, who let people walk all over him because it was easier than making waves. Or maybe they were about to find out how wrong they were. The next morning, I called in sick to work. After Sabrina left for her early meeting and Pamela took the kids to school, I went through our house systematically. I found more hotel receipts, credit card statements for an account I didn't know existed, text messages on an old phone Sabrina had left in her dresser drawer, months of conversations with Marcus, planning their future together, laughing about how clueless I was. One message thread made my stomach turn. Marcus, does he suspect anything? Sabrina, no, he's too trusting. It's actually kind of sad. Marcus, sad how? Sabrina, he still brings me coffee in bed every morning, still kisses me goodbye like we're newlyweds. He has no idea. Marcus, do you feel bad about it? Sabrina, sometimes. But then I remember how boring our life is, how predictable he is, and I just feel trapped, like I'm wasting my life. Marcus, not for much longer. Sabrina, no, not for much longer. I took pictures of everything, screenshots of the messages, photos of the receipts, copies of the credit card statements. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. That evening, Dennis called. Hey man, want to grab a beer? I haven't seen you in weeks. Sure, I said. Let's go to Murphy's. Murphy's was a dive bar downtown where Dennis and I used to hang out in our 20s. Dark, loud, and private. So, Dennis said after we'd ordered our beers, what's going on with you? You seem different lately. Different how? I don't know. Distant. And I haven't been to your place in forever. That sister-in-law of yours still camping out there? Yeah, probably for a few more weeks. Dennis nodded. She's a piece of work. What do you mean? Come on, Seth. She's obviously using you guys. And the way she acts like she owns the place. He shook his head. If it were me, she'd have been gone after the first week. Sabrina says she's family. Family doesn't treat you like the help in your own house. I took a long drink of my beer. Can I ask you something? Shoot. If you found out someone was lying to you, someone important, what would you do? Dennis studied my face. Depends on the lie, and depends on the person. Say it was someone you trusted completely, someone you thought you knew. I'd want to know the truth, all of it, even if it meant everything changed. Especially then. Dennis leaned forward. Seth, what's going on? Is this about Sabrina? I almost told him. Almost pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots, shared the whole ugly story. But something held me back. Just hypothetical, I said. But Dennis wasn't buying it. Look, man, I don't know what's happening, but if you need to talk, I'm here. Okay? Okay. We finished our beers and talked about other things. Work, sports, anything but the fact that my marriage was a lie and my life was about to implode. When I got home, Sabrina was in the living room with Pamela, both of them with glasses of wine, both of them looking up guiltily when I walked in. "Hey," Sabrina said. "How was your evening with Dennis?" "Fine. You two having a girls' night?" "Just catching up," Pamela said. "Sister time, you know." I knew all right. I knew they were probably planning the best way to divide up my assets. "Well, don't let me interrupt," I said. "I'm going to bed." "Seth?" Sabrina's voice stopped me at the bottom of the stairs. "Is everything okay? You've seemed a little off lately." I turned around and looked at my wife, sitting there with her glass of wine and her concerned expression, pretending to care about my well-being while she planned to leave me. "Everything's fine," I said. "Just tired." "Okay, I'll be up soon." But she wouldn't be. I knew she'd stay downstairs until she was sure I was asleep. Then she'd text Marcus, maybe even call him. They'd probably laugh about how easy it was to fool me, how I suspected nothing. As I lay in bed that night, I made a decision. They wanted to see what passive looked like. They wanted to see what happened when Seth Morrison just accepted things. They were about to get a masterclass in exactly how wrong they were. I spent the next 2 weeks being the perfect husband. I brought Sabrina coffee in bed every morning, kissed her goodbye, asked about her day with genuine interest. I was patient with Pamela's demands, helpful with her kids, gracious about the ongoing invasion of my space. I was so understanding, so accommodating, so completely predictable that both women visibly relaxed. Sabrina started staying out later, being less careful about her lies. Pamela began making longer-term plans for my house, talking about redecorating projects and furniture arrangements like she was going to be there forever. Meanwhile, I was planning. I hired a private investigator, a recommendation from a lawyer friend who specialized in divorce cases. I opened my own bank account and started documenting everything. Every lie, every unexplained absence, every dollar Sabrina had hidden from our joint accounts. Most importantly, I started recording conversations. It's amazing what people will say when they think you're not listening, when they've dismissed you as someone who doesn't matter, who won't fight back. Like the conversation I recorded between Sabrina and Pamela on a Thursday evening when they thought I was working late. "The house is worth at least $400,000, Pamela was saying. "Even if you have to split it, that's $200,000, plus half of his retirement account, plus alimony." "I know, but I want to make sure I handle this right. I don't want him to get vindictive." Pamela laughed. "Seth? Vindictive? The man who lets me redecorate his living room and host parties without asking? He'll probably apologize to you for making you go through a divorce." "You're probably right. He's always been conflict-averse. Trust me, I know men like Seth. They roll over and play dead rather than make a scene. You'll be fine." Or the phone conversation I recorded between Sabrina and Marcus on a Saturday afternoon when she thought I was at the hardware store. "I can't wait much longer," Marcus was saying through the speaker. "I want to wake up next to you every morning." "Soon," Sabrina promised. "I'm going to tell him after Christmas. Give him the holidays, then start fresh in January." "How generous of you. I'm not trying to be cruel. Seth's a good guy, just not the right guy, not anymore." "What changed?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing changed. Maybe I just finally admitted that I settled, that I married safe instead of passionate." "And now?" "Now I want passionate. I want to feel alive again." I listened to that conversation 3 times, memorizing every word, every inflection. Then I saved it to my growing file of evidence. But the conversation that finally pushed me over the edge happened on a Tuesday evening in December. I'd come home early from work with a headache, planning to grab some aspirin and maybe take a nap. I heard voices in the kitchen and was about to announce myself when I caught my own name. "Seth's so predictable," Sabrina was saying. "He'll probably want to keep the house, which is fine. I don't want to live there anymore anyway. Too many memories." "What about his friends?" Pamela asked. "Won't they take his side?" "What friends? Dennis? Mike? They barely tolerate him as it is. Have you seen how they act when they come over? They can't wait to leave." "Really?" "Really. Seth thinks he has all these close friendships, but the truth is, people find him boring. He's the guy you invite to things because you feel sorry for him, not because you actually want him there. My headache got worse. That's kind of sad, Pamela said, but she didn't sound sad. She sounded amused. It is sad, but it's also reality. Seth's going to end up alone because he's the kind of man who ends up alone. No passion, no fire, no backbone, just adequate. Well, better you figure that out now than waste more years. Exactly, I'm 34. I still have time to build a real life with someone who actually excites me. I stood in my own hallway, listening to my wife and her sister dissect my personality and predict my future like I was a science experiment. According to them, I was boring, friendless, and destined for solitude. My marriage was a mistake, my friendships were pity relationships, and my future was empty. That's when I decided they needed to meet the real Seth Morrison. I started with Pamela. The next morning, after Sabrina left for work and the kids left for school, I knocked on Pamela's bedroom door. "Come in," she called. I found her in bed with her laptop, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Morning, Seth. What's up?" "We need to talk." Something in my tone made her close the laptop. "Okay. What about—" I sat down in the chair across from her bed and pulled out my phone. "About this." I played the recording of her conversation with Sabrina about dividing up my assets. Pamela's face went through several interesting color changes as she listened to her own voice discussing my net worth and her sister's divorce strategy. "Seth, I can explain—" "No need. It's pretty clear." I stopped the recording. "But here's what you're going to do. You're going to pack up your kids and your things, and you're going to be out of my house by this weekend." "You can't kick me out. Sabrina invited me to stay." "Sabrina doesn't own this house. I do. It was mine before we got married, and it's still in my name only. Check the deed if you want." This was true. I'd bought the house 2 years before I met Sabrina, and we'd never gotten around to adding her name to the title. At the time, it had seemed like an oversight. Now it seemed like providence. "But where will I go? The kids are settled in school here." "That's not my problem. You've had months to find your own place. Instead, you decided to treat my house like your personal resort while planning to help my wife rob me blind." "I wasn't—" "Yes, you were. And here's the thing, Pamela. You think I'm some pushover who won't fight back. You think I'm boring and predictable and weak. But you forgot something important." "What's that?" "Boring, predictable guys often turn out to be very good at planning, and I've been planning." I showed her my phone again, scrolling through dozens of audio files. 3 weeks of recordings, you and Sabrina discussing my finances, my personality, my friends, my future. All very interesting stuff. Pamela's face had gone pale. "What do you want?" "I want you gone. And I want you to tell Sabrina that you decided to move out early, that you found a great apartment and couldn't wait to start fresh. You're not going to mention this conversation. And if I don't, then these recordings get shared with some very interesting people. Your ex-husband's lawyer, for instance. I'm sure he'd love to hear you discussing your hidden assets and your plans to conceal income. Or maybe your employer. Don't you work for a bank? I bet they have strict policies about financial fraud." "You're bluffing." "Am I? You want to find out?" We stared at each other for a long moment. Then Pamela looked away. "Fine, I'll start looking for a place." "You'll start packing. Today. I want you out by Saturday." "That's impossible. I can't find somewhere to live in 3 days." "Sure you can. You're resourceful. You've been freeloading for months while planning to help destroy my marriage. I have complete faith in your ability to land on your feet." I stood up and headed for the door. "Seth?" Pamela's voice was small. "What are you going to do about Sabrina?" I turned back and smiled. "Don't worry about Sabrina. I have special plans for Sabrina." Pamela was gone by Friday, taking her kids and her attitude and her expensive coffee preferences with her. She told Sabrina exactly what I'd instructed her to say, that she'd found a great apartment and wanted to start the new year fresh. Sabrina seemed surprised but pleased. "It'll be nice to have our space back," she said, not realizing how ironic that statement was. "Yes," I agreed. "It will be." With Pamela gone, I could focus on the main event. I waited until the Saturday before Christmas. Sabrina was getting ready to go out. Another work event that I knew was actually a romantic dinner with Marcus. "You look beautiful," I said, watching her put on earrings I'd never seen before. Probably a gift from her boyfriend. "Thank you." She kissed my cheek absently. "Don't wait up. This might run late." "I'm sure it will." After she left, I made my final preparations. Then I called Dennis. "Hey man, what are you doing tonight?" "Nothing much. Why?" "Want to come over? I've got something I want to show you." "Sure, everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. Oh, and Dennis, bring Mike and Tom if they're free. I'm having a little party." By 8 o'clock, I had 5 of my closest friends sitting in my living room, drinking beer, and wondering why I'd called this impromptu gathering. "So," Dennis said, "what's the occasion?" "Well," I said, "I wanted to share some news with you guys. Some things I've learned recently about my life, my marriage, and my friendships." I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the TV. "See, it turns out that some people have some very interesting opinions about me. About all of us, actually." I played the recording of Sabrina and Pamela discussing my friends, how they barely tolerated me, how they couldn't wait to leave when they came over, how I was the guy people invited out of pity. The room got very quiet. "Jesus, Seth," Mike said. "I'm sorry, man, that's brutal." "It gets better," I said. I played more recordings. Sabrina calling me boring and predictable. Pamela laughing about my passivity. Marcus dismissing me as a pushover who would never fight back. By the time I finished, my friends looked like they wanted to commit murder. "What are you going to do?" Tom asked. "I'm going to show them exactly how wrong they are," I said. "Want to help?" At 10:30, Sabrina came home to find 6 men sitting in her living room, all of them staring at her with expressions that could have melted steel. "Oh," she said, stopping short. "I didn't know you were having people over." "Surprise," I said. "We were just listening to some very interesting audio recordings. Want to hear?" The color drained from her face. "Seth, what are you talking about?" I pressed play on the laptop. Sabrina's voice filled the room. "Seth's so predictable. People find him boring. He's the kind of man who ends up alone." Sabrina stood frozen as her own words condemned her, as months of lies and mockery played out in front of my friends. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. "So," I said conversationally, "it turns out my wife thinks I'm a boring, friendless loser who will never fight back. What do you guys think about that?" "I think," Dennis said slowly, "that your wife doesn't know you very well." "I think," Mike added, "that she's about to find out." I looked at Sabrina, who was standing in our living room like a deer in headlights, finally understanding that her predictable, passive husband had just destroyed her entire world. "Oh, and honey," I said. "I called Marcus. He's on his way over. I thought he should hear these recordings too. You know, since he had so much to say about my character." Sabrina's face went white. "Seth, please. We can talk about this. We can work this out." "Work it out? Like you were working it out with Marcus for the past 6 months? Like you were working it out when you were planning to divorce me and take half my assets?" "I never—" "Yes, you did. I have recordings, Sabrina, hours of them. You planning your exit strategy with Pamela, you laughing about how clueless I am with Marcus, you discussing my finances like I was already dead." The doorbell rang. "That'll be Marcus," I said. "This should be fun." I opened the door to find Marcus standing on my porch, looking confused and slightly annoyed. "Hey, Seth. Sabrina said you wanted to talk to me?" "I did. Come in. We're having a little listening party." Marcus walked into the living room and saw Sabrina's tear-streaked face, saw my friends sitting there like a jury, saw the laptop connected to the TV. "What's going on?" he asked. "We're getting to know each other better," I said. "For instance, I just learned that you think I'm the most passive guy you've ever met, that I never stand up for anything." Marcus's face went through the same color changes Pamela's had. "Seth, look, I can explain—" "No need. It's all very clear." I played his greatest hits, calling me passive, dismissing me as harmless, planning his future with my wife in my own living room. When it was over, Marcus looked like he wanted to run. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "Sabrina, you're going to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. You can stay with Marcus, or in a hotel, or under a bridge. I don't care. But you're not sleeping in my house." "Seth, please." I'm filing for divorce on Monday. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. And Marcus, you're going to stay away from my wife until this is finalized, or I'm going to share these recordings with your business partners, your clients, and anyone else who might find them interesting. You can't. I can, and I will. See, you were right about one thing. I am very good at planning, and I've planned for every contingency. I looked around the room at my friends who were all staring at me with something like awe. Oh, and guys, thanks for coming tonight. It means a lot to know I have real friends, not the pity relationships my wife thought you were. Dennis stood up and clapped me on the shoulder. Anytime, man, anytime. One by one, my friends said their goodbyes, each of them making sure to let Sabrina and Marcus know exactly what they thought of people who betrayed their friends. After they left, Sabrina made one last attempt. Seth, I know this looks bad, but we can get through this. We can go to counseling, work on our problems. Our problems? I laughed. Sabrina, our problems include the fact that you've been cheating on me for months, planning to divorce me while pretending everything was fine, and calling me a boring loser behind my back. Which of those problems do you think counseling is going to fix? She started to cry. I never meant for it to happen this way. No, you meant for it to happen quietly, with you controlling the narrative and me never finding out about Marcus. You meant for me to just accept whatever story you told me and hand over half my assets without a fight. That's not true. It's exactly true. And you know what the funny thing is? You were almost right about me. I almost was that guy. I almost let Pamela walk all over me, almost let you plan my destruction without fighting back. I walked to the front door and opened it. But here's the thing you forgot, Sabrina. Even the most passive guy in the world has a breaking point, and you found mine. Sabrina and Marcus left together, her suitcase in his car, both of them looking like they'd been hit by a truck. I stood in my doorway and watched them drive away. Then I went back inside my house, my quiet, peaceful, Pamela-free house, and poured myself a drink. My phone buzzed with text messages from my friends, all variations of "holy shit, man," and "that was amazing," and "call if you need anything." I realized that Sabrina had been wrong about everything. Wrong about my friends, wrong about my character, and most importantly, wrong about my future. I wasn't going to end up alone. I was going to end up free. And for the first time in months, I felt like myself again.